We are going to start our study session. Thank you.
I'll call Megan too.
Councilman Joe, have a seat. All right, I have item number 8, and I am going to call that ready. Councilor Bay.
Thank you, Madam President. Items number 9 and 10. Just for the sake of discussion, is there anyone present that can discuss item 9?
Up to the mic.
And before you start, Jen, can I get the counselors, when you're speaking, to speak directly into the mics and to some new ones?
Thank you, President. Hi, everyone. Jen Tift, Neighborhood and Business Development. So item 9 is a appropriation from our ARPA funding, which would go to the Syracuse Economic Development Corporation in a not to exceed amount of $6 million. I had emailed to, I think, everyone on the council probably about an hour or so ago, a one-page summary, which is really just our staff's perspective on how a program could be structured. This would have to be obviously voted on by the SEDCO board, and I'm happy to distribute a copy of that if anyone didn't get a chance to take a look at it yet. But essentially, what we're proposing to do at SEDCO is create a financing program to assist our small businesses and to help with some of the economic development projects in the city that might need a little financial assistance to get over the hump. One of those example projects which came up in the committee meeting last week was the renovations at the Landmark Theater, for example, but there's a whole host of other projects and a lot of our small businesses in particular that really are still in need of support to recover and grow coming out of the pandemic. One of the things that we're proposing to do is to carve out a portion of the money really for small businesses less than 50 employees or micro enterprises less than 10 employees to really help them with some of their projects and priorities from an economic recovery perspective. Of course, the ARPA rules will apply to how we have to administer those funds, so there are some very specific parameters that we have to follow according to the ARPA legislation. All that's sort of laid out in the one-page document. So I'm happy to distribute it. Folks can take a look at it now or read it between now and the next study session and let us know if we have questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have right now as well.
All right, well, I'll say what everybody already knows. It's very dangerous to send us something only an hour before we meet. It makes it a little tough for councilors to become abreast of what it is. Let me ask you this, Jen. On the micro loans and on the small business loans, I'm saying loans, it only says fund. I'm assuming that we're doing loans here, right?
Loans, yes.
What's the what's the percentage that they would have to pay back? Have we established at what percent these loans are being offered?
No, so I mean, normally we'd obviously ask the SEDCO board to consider, kind of the financing structure. The one thing that we were kind of considering is doing kind of the 6 million, we had kind of laid out here maybe 1.25 to be set aside for what we're calling a forgivable loan program. So we'd look to do it where if certain criteria are met, we would potentially be able to forgive those loans. Again, that would be assistance that would be really set aside for small businesses and especially those micro enterprises. A lot of the feedback that we've gotten from them, frankly, during the pandemic is that they've had access to a lot of other types of loan programs. Frankly, there still is actually money on the table at the federal level, at the state level for, low interest loans. But what a lot of, especially the smallest of the small businesses are really looking for is other financial assistance that either they don't have to repay if they meet certain criteria. And so one of our ideas is to actually set it up as a forgivable loan program, a portion of it, but the majority of it would be a more traditional revolving loan program. To your question, I think we'd look to do that at rates potentially even lower than what SEDCO normally lends at, which is anywhere between 3 and 5% today. We might look to do, something in the 1 to 2% range for those loans.
So, I can see the logic of forgivable loans for micro businesses. I'm not sure for small businesses, though. Is it possible to consider a medium? If we're looking at, 1% or 1.5% on the payback, I think that's, at least from my perspective, a smarter move. But forgivable for an employer with 50 employees or less, the idea is that we're helping them sustain their business. I would think that they would be able to pay that back.
Right,
And
yeah,
obviously
that's
it's
sort of how we laid it out. So businesses with 50 employees or less could potentially apply for a forgivable loan. And then there's this additional money that would be available at an interest rate to your point for
I understand
businesses.
that. I understand that you're saying that, small businesses with 50 or less would be able to apply for a forgivable loan.
Okay,
I'm saying, why would we do that?
okay, got it. So you're really talking about truly the micro enterprises. So
Yeah,
like
I
the
can
less
see
than 10.
micro, having opportunities to benefit from a forgivable loan. But, let's take an employer with 50 employees.
Sure,
I would think that they're sustainable to a certain degree, certainly if they're still around. We give them a micro loan, give them a small business loan for them to stabilize whatever they need to stabilize. Why not, have them pay that back? And
Sure.
I think a happy medium there, to your point, instead of a forgivable loan, from my perspective, and to your point, instead of 3 to 5% on the interest, we do 1.5%, 2%. We do
Yeah.
1%.
Okay.
Can we give that some consideration?
yep, that's helpful feedback. Any other
Is,
questions?
is this the program you were talking about that could also turn into grants?
Yeah, so that would be the forgivable
Oh, that would be-
loan
okay.
aspect, yeah.
And you
Essentially,
were-
once it's forgiven, it's basically like a grant.
You were looking into the logistics of that because, of course, grants and loans are different things.
Right, yeah, and so that's where I think what Counselor Bay is suggesting is that we would target those forgivable loans, which would really work more as grants, if you think about it that way, to the micro enterprises, which would be businesses with 10 employees or less.
Thank you, it's hard to hear from you.
Yeah.
So I heard, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, President. It's you.
I heard you say that the criteria is set forth, right?
So some of the overall parameters for what we can lend or give money for is established in the American Rescue Plan Act itself. But it's pretty, I think, flexible, frankly, and we could set some additional criteria, I think, certainly on top of
I
that.
hate to see, because Mr. Ennis, I worked closely with him over this pandemic, because
Yeah.
we sit here and put out all of this money, and we talk about what people can get, and everyone I sent grants or the funding, they never qualified, they weren't, available
Yeah.
to them. So I need to know that when we start moving this along and talking about it, that the folks that we're talking about with the 10 or less employees, they're going to be able to qualify for
Yes.
some of this money.
So President Hudson, one of the things that we laid out in this document, and we talked with the Economic Development Committee members about last week, specifically, I think, to address many of the concerns from those businesses that you're referencing now with some of our other pandemic assistance, is an allowance for businesses that maybe were created at the start of the pandemic or during the pandemic. That was one of the categories of businesses that really had very few avenues for support from any of the previous federal programs or the state programs. And to be clear, ARPA does generally say that support for small businesses or for businesses in general really should be directed at businesses that experienced an economic hardship during the pandemic. So that sort of presumes you were in existence before the pandemic, then you had
And I get it,
But-
I get it, but they
but
have to
there is-
understand that these
Yeah.
folks, because the one particular one up on the university, she got her family and they donated and put it all this
Right.
money to open, so there was an economic hardship
Yeah.
for these people. So we
Yeah.
have to take that into consideration.
Sure. Well, we think there's a little flexibility within ARPA for us to potentially consider some of those newer businesses, especially if they are in one of those qualified census tracts, which in our city, most of the city is actually in a qualified census tract from an ARPA perspective. So we think there's a way for us to potentially look at that. And of course, I'll just remind everyone that one of your own, Councilor Green, is a board member on SEDCO. So he would be really in the room helping to make some of those decisions.
What would, Jen, what would you imagine the average loan to be? And is there a cap on the maximum that someone could get?
So I think we would look to cap the average, or we'd look to cap the maximum, especially for the loans we'd make available as forgivable loans. Those obviously would be resources that wouldn't come back to us. I think we wouldn't have to be as worried about a cap for the revolving loan fund, because we would set terms where we would, obviously get that money plus interest back, and we'd be able to put that back out into the community. We do know there is a range of need out there in the community. So I know a lot of you have had conversations with folks at the Landmark, for example. They have a fairly, decent sized need. But certainly for the forgivable loans, we'd look to, I think, cap those so that we could distribute that money more widely. And we'd obviously look to distribute it around the whole city and take those things into consideration. The SEDCO board normally does that typically when it's lending money, and that's how we distributed the COVID dollars when we were lending out the loans. I think the average size of our loans or grants during the pandemic was between $15,000 and $20,000 typically, and so I think we'd expect, again, on average, it'd be probably about the same for this program, with a few exceptions, because we do know there are some priority projects out there that probably need a little bit more than that, but we would be issuing those as true loans, which we would collect back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I would just, we've obviously, all of us have discussed the Landmark, and I think there's a lot of support for it from the council, but I guess I just wouldn't want to see I would rather see this go to 100 different projects than 3 or 4 is my only concern. If it's not specifically kind of laid out that we would, that a lot of the percentage of the 4.5 would go to many businesses rather than 1 or 2, would be my only concern with trying to set a cap to make sure it got out to the average working small business, which I think is a goal of you guys as well, but it might be good to specify some language to make sure it's not all used up on 3 or 4 projects.
Yeah, that's very much, I think, the intent of what we try to do. I think we can establish some parameters where we can be able to regulate that a bit, to your point. But yeah, the intent would be to support certainly the broadest set of businesses we can with this money.
Under the guidelines for loan forgiveness, one of the criteria is all taxes owed to the city must be current. So did you guys take into consideration that if the businesses were affected by COVID and loss of income, that they may be behind in their taxes? And if so, how would
Yeah, so it's one of those things that I think, we generally try to work with all of our businesses that come to, to SEDCO or SIDA or the city proper for assistance. And I think this is one of those things where certainly our preference and would be to prioritize businesses that are, keeping current on all of their payments. I think we try to work with those businesses as they're applying for these funds to see if there's a way that they can be made current. I think a key that we're trying to really, get at, which I think relates a little bit to a comment that Councilor Bay made in the committee meeting last week was, we should be trying to invest in businesses that are maybe they've been struggling during the pandemic, but we think they're stable businesses. We think they're going to emerge from this pandemic successfully. I think if there's certainly a history of tax delinquency, if there are other red flags, the SEDCO staff does a really great job of underwriting all of our loans, and they would do the same for this too, just to verify that the businesses are in the best position to take these funds. We just don't want to be in a position where we lend money and then the business closes, 2 or 3 months from now. That doesn't help really them or us, frankly. And so we want to be as supportive as we can, and I think we want to work with businesses that are struggling, certainly. But we're trying to come up with measurable ways that we can kind of ensure that the money is going to be put to good use, and that we're going to obviously recover it as a loan, but in addition, that the businesses are really going to be successful in the years coming out of this program. Any other questions?
Just briefly, Jen. So I was just looking at the letter you sent to the committee versus what we have in front of us now. It looks to be like there's a $2 million addition added to the Community Development Impact Fund. Can
Yes.
you explain that?
Yeah, so that comes directly from the recommendation that was made in the committee to increase the overall funding to account specifically for the landmark project, because we do know that that project in particular is going to be seeking funding. They need between $1.8 and $2 million, we believe, and so I think the point was made last week that we didn't want to, deplete the whole pool by that amount. We'd rather make, about $4 million available for all the other businesses and still try to help, them in particular.
Certainly understood. Thank you.
If I could add a perspective, what it was, Councilor White, the nature of the loan, if you will, the bridge loan to Landmark was different in character than the others. We're doing a bridge loan based on the fact that money coming that was already allotted from the state was slowed by COVID. So ultimately, we would be reimbursed via that state money once it was received. The difference, of course, is the fact that the state's not going to pay us interest on the loan, and so that's what makes it different. And so I thought it would be good for us to make that adjustment. I appreciate that the administration did it. I will say this, though, Jen. Right now, I think this requires more discussion and more clarity. With all due respect, it's almost like a blank check of sorts. It's not itemized enough, and specifically on whatever percentage we determine on the loan, if we can make that determination, also the difference in terms of who receives or can apply for a forgivable loan. I don't think we can just kind of leave that out there broad to where we don't have clarity on where that would go. To me, it makes more sense for micro businesses. Last thing I'll say, forgive me if I'm preaching to the choir, but the idea in a lot of respects is that we make this ARPA money also work for the city overall, and it seems to make more sense as opposed to simply doing forgivable loans to small businesses across the board, potentially, that we make it so that we actually get some money back, and that can go into our general fund and help to fund our operations. To me, that makes a lot more sense. So if we can give consideration to that, ask my colleagues to consider as much as well. But right now, Madam President, I'm going to hold the question on item number 9.
Madam President, if I may, I have a question, Jen.
Oh, sure.
So here, in the criteria section, there are qualified census tract. The document that you sent this morning, does that include that definition? Because when you
No, we do have a map. I thought we had distributed it to everyone on council a couple weeks ago when the ARPA plan was being released, but we can send that out to everyone here. That'll apply to all of the ARPA programs, obviously. So if folks haven't seen the map, we can certainly make that available.
I'm asking that because I think as we distribute this money, I think census tract should be a focus. Yes, I understand that in the city of Syracuse, we are pretty much all distressed, but there are certain neighborhood or census tract that are doing a little better than the other. Not to say that they are much higher, but they are doing better. And when you look at, for example, Sedgwick versus Brighton, for example, that's definitely there's a difference there. Businesses in the Brighton neighborhood certainly would need more
Right.
So I would be interested to see how we define that.
Okay, we can, like I said, we'll redistribute the map. I think you'll see that the map largely reflects precisely what you're saying, Counselor.
Yeah. And that my second question is, with this loan, is it within the limitation of the ARPA that they have to be spent within the next 2 years, right? When you give them out, so the loan have to be paid back within that time, or can it go beyond that?
No, I think the loan repayment period could extend beyond, but the city has to initially disperse the funding by December 2024. So, for example, if we distributed any of this loan funding in like 2022 or 2023, because we waited until then, right? I think we could set a loan repayment term that extended beyond that deadline. But generally speaking, the city has to disperse its initial ARPA allocation by that date. So we would, and certainly with this program, one of the reasons why we're bringing you this proposal for some of the ARPA funding in one of the first tranches of requests is because our intent would be to get these loans out the door in the next year or so. I mean, we wouldn't be trying to hold this money for 2 or 3 years. So we're hoping to see it come back, you know,
So
in that time frame.
The loan will maintain the regular terms for SETCO, for example. I don't know what the terms of SETCO, is it 5, 10 years? So that the loan would fall within that, except.
Yeah, we'd look to establish a loan term, which would be consistent with, you know, I think what we did during the pandemic when we issued the loans about a year ago. I think we set initially a 12-month repayment cycle. We then extended it to 18 months, acknowledging that a lot of the businesses were hurting. And then the board actually extended it again. But we would look to set a reasonable time frame. Certainly, I believe in the 1 to 2 year time frame for most of these borrowers.
Okay. Yes, Madam President.
Ready, Counselor Hogan. I'm sorry.
We didn't do item 10.
I know, but Counselor Hogan, I think, has
Oh, I had a question?
has a
Sorry about
question.
Just procedurally, you know, especially capital improvements, for instance, is in the second part of the proposal with the Community Development Impact Fund. Procedurally, I mean, once this money, if we decide to pass this, it'll end up, it's just SEDCO, correct? I mean, will the council have any kind of input as far as capital improvement goes, or any of these neighborhood projects? That's my big.
No, I mean, I think we'd look to administer these funds like we have with the other, you know, the CDBG COVID funding that SEDCO distributed on behalf of the city, which, you know, basically was up to the SEDCO board to make the final determinations on
Council had a lot of
the
impact.
businesses.
We had a lot of impact as far as the businesses and everything else, and also, I mean, with CDBG, you know, annual budget, we have a lot of impact in that. I'm concerned that
Right.
city councilors won't have any kind of say in any of these projects that are sort of, you know, you list here as capital improvements or renovations, planning costs, project development, all that. Procedurally, I'm very concerned about that, so I'm glad Councilor Bay is going to hold this with a question mark.
Well, you know, Councilor Hogan, as a matter of rule, this should probably be accepted and passed by SEDCO before it comes to us anyway. And so, for that reason, we may be holding this well. For some reason, with all due respect, we tend to do things in reverse. And, you know, we can't continue, we can't do that in this instance.
Just for the development projects, we would still, any development project in neighborhoods would have to go through the existing
Planning
process.
commission and
right?
all that, but I'm talking about like the decisions on what
Projects to provide
And prioritize.
assistance to,
Right.
based on the projects that would come to SEDCO and ask for the assistance through the process for whether or not the project is warranting the loan.
Well, some of the projects might be neighborhood-oriented, neighborhood-based, and come organically from the neighborhoods too, correct?
What,
Councilors, Eric Ennis, Neighborhood and Business Development. So just to answer a couple of your questions, Councilor Hogan, in the process over the last year, as we've worked to get grant funding out the door, some of the CDBG funds have been mentioned. We've had numerous conversations with members of the council. I remember numerous calls with President Hudson. If there's projects that you're aware of, businesses that you're talking to, if this is passing, or if this is passed, SEDCO would have the ability to take that into consideration strongly and certainly work with businesses that you're directly talking to as a part of this process. One of the reasons why SEDCO is, from an efficiency standpoint, works is that we have the infrastructure. We've been doing lending for years, but just having the ability to already have finance on staff, be able to underwrite loans, and then manage these accounts. That's part of the reason why SEDCO, even though it's a separate entity from the city, it's fully staffed by neighborhood and business development. We have the capability to do these loans, and it simply works for the businesses because it allows us to get the funds out the door, but we very much take into consideration and work closely with counselors, especially in districts or across the city, if we can work with you to support the kind of businesses that will get new jobs and new investment into neighborhoods. So I just, in terms of our ability to work with you, we more than welcome that chance to take a closer look at these projects, but ultimately SEDCO as a separate entity is the one that is making the final investment, but we take all of your feedback into consideration.
I think the problem, with all due respect with that statement, is that the only authority here by charter is us. And so this is why I make the statement that it needs to pass SEDCO first. As a rule, it comes here after those bodies vote, and things have been in reverse, whether it's with SEDCO, the Planning Commission, and the like. We've made this statement in the past that it would need to pass those boards first before we would consider it, and so that needs to happen in this instance.
Okay.
Councilor Hogan, were you done?
No, I'm done. You finished.
No, I would just say I completely second what Councilor Bay is saying here. I think we need a fully developed program for us to approve before we move forward.
Okay. All right.
So, as stated, that item will be held, and I'll try to move fast on item 10 because we've been here for a while. If I recall, the only thing we had in the committee meeting was a map. I brought it up. It was stated that was not presented to us committee meeting for consideration, if I'm not mistaken. We didn't vote on this item, did we?
I thought you moved it
Because you
forward.
provided an explanation on it.
Yeah.
That's great, okay,
Yeah.
thanks for the reminder.
Yep.
So if you want to do a brief
Sure.
explanation?
So, yeah, item 10 is basically a request that council endorse a grant application that SEDCO will be making to the New York State Office of Community Renewal as a part of the CFA process that's underway right now. The specific set of projects that we'd look to support is in the 45 to 4700 blocks of South Salina Street, which is in Councilor Majoke's district. There are a couple of projects in particular that are pretty far along. They're basically shovel ready, which is what the state looks for to provide grant assistance, and we can request up to $50,000 per property. We can also request up to $15,000 in streetscape improvements, so trees and sidewalks and the like for beautification of that area. This is part of Office of Community Renewal's Main Street program, which I know a lot of you are very familiar with. And we've in the past received Main Street support to assist projects in other parts of the city. So this is an area in the valley that was identified as, again, having kind of shovel-ready projects that could really benefit from the additional grant assistance from the state. So all we need is a resolution from council basically saying that the municipality is supportive of the project for SEDCO to be the applicant.
Any questions from anybody?
List of the projects.
We can provide that to you. I don't have it unfortunately ready at the moment, but Victoria Coit's project, which I know a lot of you are familiar with, is one of them.
Right, but I'm looking down that whole quarter, and we have a lot of, like, that man that have all that money down, so I'm curious to know if those projects are gonna be included in that.
Yep, and we have to, just based on the, kind of the rules of the program and how the state looks to really concentrate funding, we have to kind of pick a pretty discrete area, which is why we're really focusing on just a few blocks. They don't really like it when you apply for like a 6 or 7 block stretch, for example. So we're somewhat limited in terms of what we can do there, but we're happy to provide additional information between now and Monday.
Yeah, Madam President, I had a conversation with Jen and Eric last week about this. I think, for me, anything that can help our neighborhood would be great. And I also had asked about other projects that would also and should also be included, but I guess with the limitation of what this grant is, it doesn't allow other to be included. So, as a district councilor, I'm really in support of this.
Any other questions? No? All right, item 10 is ready.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Counselor Green.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 11 is a agreement to extend an existing IT contract while we do an RFP to potentially replace them. Is there any questions on this item? Okay. Item 12 is an agreement to hire an appraiser. Any questions on this one?
Just note it says trail preparations rather than trial preparations. We're not prepping trails.
You. All right, items 13 and 14 are settlements, which we can discuss in executive session. Jim, are we going to schedule that for Monday? Yeah, okay, so we'll do that Monday. Item 15 is to appropriate funds for the Onondaga Historical Association, actually going back last year for funds that they were supposed to receive but didn't. Is there any questions on that item? Okay. Item 16, Tim, we'll have you come up and walk us through this one.
Tim Rudd, Budget Director. It's just a small budget transfer, so we're taking $45,000 from medical insurance and moving it to pay the $20,000 for the OHA, which was the item you just described, and $25,000 in sort of miscellaneous settlements that came through that make it just so we don't have to bond to pay for any of the settlements. Any
Questions on this?
Says
Total amount?
For 45,000 total, so taking 45 from medical insurance, giving 20 to OHA, 25 to judgment and claims. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Those are the finance items, and then I'll be handling Councilor Carney's DPW items. So we'll start with item 17, which is revocable permission for City Hall Commons. Can we have someone come up and walk us through this one?
Good afternoon, councilors. John Kiveland, Department of Engineering. Item number 17 is a revocable permission to the City of Syracuse to own, operate, and maintain the atrium building behind City Hall Commons. The city is interested in disposing City Hall Commons. Granting a revocable permission to the atrium would make it more attractive for a purchaser.
So my first question, I guess, and this is probably not a question for you, John, but where are we on the sale? I mean, what's the timeline, and when do we want to market it, and all that stuff? And who is the person for that?
I'll defer to somebody else.
Councilors, Eric Ennis, Neighborhood and Business Development. So this has involved numerous departments involved in this discussion with the future of the building. One of the things that we've realized is that given efficiency standards, technology, and I think coming out of the era of COVID, we believe that City Hall Commons is a building that it's a property the city will be able to dispose of in the future. There's a lot of planning that's going into considering this in terms of timeline. One of the things that we don't know right offhand as far as a target release. However, the thought process would be the city would draft up an RFP, a request for proposals for individuals or development companies that may be interested in purchasing the property. Now, one of the things that may beg the question, where would city staff relocate to? Equally, we are still talking about the logistics of how much square footage, how much space, the configuration of the current building. It's a beautiful building in Flatiron style, not the most efficient though for city offices and city space. So as we look to where the city could potentially relocate staff, we are very much looking to also issue an RFP that we would be able to solicit bids for whether leasing space, if the city did find a property that we could ultimately use as an office. So all of that is very much underway in terms of developing these types of RFPs. The intention would be, before anything would be to be released with timeline, we would go back to the council and certainly inform you of that. The revocable permission is one of the things that we've identified, though, dating back years and years with this property. The ability to have that space when the atrium was added on and built to the property, having that basically have all of the right-of-way standards, and that's what John was presenting earlier. This would give us the ability to have a property with the necessary revocable permission for the current atrium space, and then in the future, as we look towards potentially disposing of the structure, all of that will already be set from a right-of-way perspective. So that gives a little background in terms of hopefully just why the revocable permission is one of the things we're looking to do first.
So the revocable permission is still something the city can cancel with 60-day notice, though, right?
That's correct.
Let's say someone buys this building and then they're operating a restaurant in the atrium, city could cancel that within 60 notice, right?
That's correct, and if engineering, if my understanding is correct of that, but yes. And so one of the things is that for any future owner of this property, we certainly are going to be taking into consideration what is the best use for the property, what's the best use for downtown. And so as we look with whoever this potential new owner could be, this would very much be a part of the discussion in terms of what is the future even of that portion of the right-of-way. Is the atrium even necessary for the future use of the building? That's a little bit for something for a future developer to consider.
So I would imagine, obviously, that'll negatively impact the potential sale of the building when it comes. And so is this the best way to go about it, or should we do something that's more permanent that would give the next owner the ability to utilize that?
So I think it's a fair question. I think one of the things is that we know at this point the atrium already exists and was built as an add-on addition. So at this point, we're basically bringing the building up to where the current configuration is of that space. One of the things, too, is that as we look at development proposals, as we consider the future of the building, we'll at least will have it kind of currently up to the standard of a structure like that as assembly space. If ultimately we receive a proposal that we find attractive, and with council being a part of that decision, we would have the ability to potentially have it demolished, removed. The revocable permission may not even need to be a part of that. But at this point in time, we're trying to make sure that we have this building already set with that right-of-way approval.
So we're given a revocable permission to ourselves.
Yeah. That is correct, yes.
And then hopefully we won't deny it in 60 days. We can give it to ourselves again.
It is correct, yeah. The irony is not lost on me.
The Flatiron building has sort of got me thinking.
Yep.
So why, like to Councilor Green's point, why wouldn't we just say revocable permission for an indeterminate length of time in order to make it more attractive to sell?
I believe the request before you is standard with how we approach revocable permissions in general, given the fact this is a very unique circumstance when we're issuing it to ourselves. But I think the way the ordinance was written is that this would follow our standard procedure with revocable permissions. We as a city, we're granting it, we're giving it to ourselves, but we have the ability to make changes as needed. That would go back to council. But the language itself is reflective of how we do revocable permissions.
Oh, that's as clear as a bell.
Eric, I got a quick question. Was it the recommendation of law to use this type of conveyance?
There was, and I think that we were trying to identify what is the most straightforward vehicle, and I think knowing it required council approval, but looking at that as a way to make sure that the record for this building, how we approach the right-of-way, and using the atrium space, the revocable permission was identified as the best way to do that.
I mean, can you get us some information on the underpinning from that? Because I mean, it seems like a permanent easement might be a better way to go, because that way it's just there permanently.
Sure. Yes, I will make sure that we talk with law and get a little bit more insight into that.
Thank you.
So Eric, to come to this conclusion that it's best to sell the building because of its inefficiency, was there some calculation done to figure out what the cost would be, and that selling it would make more sense than making it fit what we need?
Sure. I think that there are more details that we need to finish fleshing out before any issuance of an RFP takes place, and ultimately before we select who the ultimate buyer could be. And I think that we're looking at that from a square footage perspective. I mean, right now I can tell you City Hall Commons is approximately 49,000 square feet. But if all of you have been in the building, some office configurations are so much larger than the office space next door. We believe that we can improve efficiency by reducing that overall footprint. So while we might be parting ways with a 49,000 square foot building, city staff will not need another 40,000 or 49,000 square foot space. So we believe that could potentially lead to cost savings, more efficiency, collaboration between staff so that we're not all through 7 stories of offices. So there's a number of ways why we're looking at this as a way to improve efficiency.
Are they all filled as of now at the offices, or are there empty spaces in there?
The building is largely, I mean, every floor is occupied, I can tell you that. And there may be some offices that may be not occupied at the moment due to staff turnover or changes, but for the most part, the building is fully occupied.
I would be interested to know what would be the cost to kind of upgrade it.
Sure.
Because from what I'm hearing, that the cost of maintaining it and maybe configuring it to fit, what the city may.
Sure. I think some information like that, I mean, it's a historic building. We think it is a great development candidate for the future, given just its location, proximity in downtown. I think some of that, we would look to the development community to tell us the total renovation costs and what that would need. I can certainly see if we have numbers in terms of just maintenance from a year-to-year basis for the property. But we know it's an old structure. It needs a lot of investment to really bring it up to what it could be.
Yeah, and if it is fully occupied, and I guess the question become later, where do you move all these offices, and what would be the cost of them? That's why I'm saying, instead of just, disposing of it in terms of selling it, that do we really save anything by taking this burden to take it here? So
it's a very good question, and I know that this element, and I know this is certainly a conversation we need to have more depth with council about. The revocable permission is certainly the first aspect and really a step in the right direction towards making this building what I would say is closer to being sale ready. The discussion you're having about maintenance costs, these are things that as we get more information, as those details are fleshed out, I think engaging with the council for greater feedback is absolutely, I know myself, but speaking for the rest of the administration, we're happy to do that.
I think, obviously, to Councilman Joke's point, price differential would be key.
Mm-hmm.
If we're just making a lateral movement, I don't really know what we're doing there. And, if the outcome, I kind of throw this out there, is the past consideration of joint space in the Carnegie Building, which will only result in a big fee on the abstract,
Mm-hmm.
we need to make sure that that's less as well.
Sure.
But those, a lot of times we have the promotion of shared services, but the cost to the taxpayer in the city is larger than they know. Sure. And I think we need to make sure we're clear on what that price differential will be.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay.
Question, how far are we away from being sale ready? Because you're talking about disposing, how far away are we?
So we would make sure all counselors are notified and made aware when we have an RFP that would be ready for issuance. I think that what we're talking about, the revocable permission, is one of those steps. I think in terms of timeline, it's very much still to be determined what the release date of the RFPs would be. The one for the building and then one potentially for city staff.
It's talking about it's talking about disposing of it, and I know what we're here talking about today. So I just want to know, are we a year out, we 2 years out, we 3 years out, how far out are we?
Sure. I think the most accurate way to put it would be looking at it from a seasonal basis. I think right now we're trying to use the summer to finish up the necessary details, that some of which we've talked about from counselors. So ideally, you would see an RFP potentially released in 2021. So it would potentially happen this year, as long as we get all those logistics and details that I've mentioned sorted out. And certainly we would talk to the council before any type of RFP would be released.
And I know that this building hasn't given us any revenue through the pandemic, but can we go back maybe 5 years and see what the revenue was that was coming in from that building?
From City Hall Commons in particular. And I know that we do lease space to the barber shop, for example. There's the hair salon on the ground level, so there's a rent payment and an agreement with that tenant. So there is minimal revenue that we're generating, but it's.
It used to be a space that people could rent out, so I know that goes back
I
a
see
couple
what- okay.
of years. So I want you to
Yes.
see how far back did we get revenue and what the revenue was from that space rental.
Thank you. Okay. And sorry, I didn't realize you were talking about the atrium
All
space
of
for
it.
rentals.
It's the
Okay.
same building, all of it.
Great. Okay. I'll work with the necessary staff to look at those estimates and revenue that we've generated.
Just one more quick question.
Sure.
Before you escape. I'm just wondering, other than the need to try and make this sale ready, is there any legal jeopardy to not making this correction? Like, what would happen, said that we didn't approve it?
So, a good question. And I think, not speaking for law, I mean, my understanding is that ultimately, if we were to sell the building, a future developer were to purchase it, if their desire was to keep the atrium space, we need to reconcile the atrium space right now, which is existing in the right of way. So likely that a future owner would have to come back to council and seek that permission to use it within the right of way. So I think what we're trying to do is get one step ahead of things and move a step in the right direction, pending the fact that this would ultimately be in someone else's hands in the future.
I just gotta say, it really sounds like an easement might be what you're looking for. I mean, I don't know what the law told you, but.
Sure.
I mean, if the whole idea is to make it sale ready and make it the cleanest transaction, right? I mean, you're gonna leave it such that the city of Syracuse is still gonna have a revocable permission, and you're gonna sell the property to somebody else, unless you're selling that permission with it, right?
Sure.
It'll further complicate.
And I will certainly go back to law and have that conversation. We did look at numerous options, while I don't have that answer right in front of me, I think that we identified this as the most straightforward way, but we'll get more clarity on that for you in particular.
Sorry. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The one point that came up in a lot of the conversations was that the historic nature of the building, the atrium may not qualify when they use historic tax credits, and they may have to remove it. So I think that is part of the not wanting to make a permanent solution when somebody might tear it off.
Got it.
Any other questions before I step away? Okay. All right.
How old is the building?
How old is it? I know it was built in the 19th century, 18 something. It was originally, so for anyone who's interested. Originally it was a 4-story building, and then at one point 3 additional floors were added on. So it's been expanded over the years, but again, I believe that also took place in the 1800s. So I don't have that answer right off the top of my head, but I'll get that back to you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Councilor Hogan,
1890.
Okay, thank you. Item 18 is a local law to grant a permanent easement to Mayor Mohawk. It'll be introduced and tabled on Monday. Is there any questions on this item?
Just a quick one. I just have a quick question. Decommissioning, who's doing the lights? Is that you, Mr. Towsley? Because I know that you're decommissioning a lot of lights, and I saw that come up. I see Martin Luther King West, and I just want, yeah. Because we've decommissioned quite a few lights throughout the city, and and it was before this administration started happening. Why are we taking the lights down?
Good afternoon, Councillor. The traffic signal at MLK and State is part of the current paving projects on both State and Salina Street. During the design process, we looked at accidents, we looked at existing infrastructure, including the traffic signal. That light was determined not to be warranted, not required anymore. The light in its current configuration does not meet current standards. So the option was, based on the warrants, to decommission the light. Part of the decommissioning process is to put the light on flash for 90 days, operate the intersection as a stop all-way. And during that 90 days is to do an analysis to make sure that there's no accidents or any other issues. If that study indicates there aren't any issues and it can operate as a 4-way, then we remove the light and then we operate as a 4-way stop.
So is that what we're going to see happening throughout the city on a regular basis? Because you decommissioned Newell, that one went down. Decommissioned State Street, that one went down. So it's been quite a few in that particular part of the city that's been decommissioned.
The city sought federal funds to do traffic analysis and studies. These are traffic signals that are known to be substandard. Some of those options did result in the traffic signals getting upgraded or replaced. Others, when you do the analysis, it's determined they're no longer needed, and that they can operate a four-way stop or other similar signage-controlled intersection. But right now, there's no future plans to do any further analysis. We do have a traffic signal project, the interconnect project, where we'll be upgrading existing signals along Salina Street and some other corridors. We're not going to decommission any signals under that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 19 is an agreement with Syracuse University for parking spaces in the Washington Street garage. Is there any questions on that? Item 20 is a bond ordinance to issue bonds to defray the cost of green construction on a number of streets. Any questions on that? Okay. Item 21 is a intermunicipal agreement with Onondaga County, also for green construction, related to item 20. Item 22 is to appropriate funds from the American Rescue Plan to put aside $4.5 million to implement the municipal sidewalk program. Is there any questions on that item? Item 23 is similarly from the ARPA money, and it's $677,000 to purchase and install revenue control equipment in our parking garages. Any questions on that? Yeah, go ahead.
Is anybody here from the administration that can talk on 22? So I had people actually reach out to me saying like they're coming downtown to fill out an application to get on the waiting list. So is there going to be like because we know that's not how the program actually works. Is there going to be any public communication to homeowners so they'll know exactly what to do, what not to do, and how this process actually works? And when will you guys roll that out?
Yes, so there will be, I think, part of what we were waiting for is to finalize the details with home headquarters on what the financial assistance program is going to be look like. And then we've had conversations about whether it's a mailing, communications out to the public, because I think there is some confusion, understandably. It's a major shift in policy. And I know there's been some confusion about what the owner's responsibility is at this point with regard to snow and ice, which is, just for the record, owners are still responsible for clearing snow and ice from their sidewalks. What we provide is a supplemental service. And so certainly I think, and we've had some conversations about what that mailing would look like to people so that we can make sure to let them know, this is not a system that's by request. And it's going to be, it's going to operate similarly to road reconstruction in that we will do the work where the need is the greatest.
Counselor, are you talking about the financial hardship portion of it, or the?
Oh, just in general. I mean, the phone calls that I've gotten is, where do I go to sign up to get a new sidewalk?
Right.
Or how do I get on the waiting list? Or I'm on my way down to City Hall to get on. So they just don't know. They heard that people can get new sidewalks, so they don't know how the program works. So I just feel like it needs to be some type of communication.
Absolutely, and I was hoping to have the details with home headquarters more finalized, but I just haven't yet. And so once we have that, then I think we'd like to proactively reach out to folks. I also want to make sure that people know that the exemption is an option. I don't, that's not a secret. We want people to take advantage of that are eligible for it, and what that process looks like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corey, while we have you, is there going to have to be a separate appropriation of ARPA funds for the financial assistance?
Yes, so that, as we discussed at the DPW Standing Committee, the details of that weren't finalized, and it makes sense that we wait until we have more of those details finalized before we go before council. So my goal is to have that for the next council meeting ready to go.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the people, when they call us city councilors about who do I talk to about those issues that Councilor Allen just brought up, we tell them to call Corey Driscoll at City.
Absolutely.
I just was making sure.
Yeah,
No laterals.
No, I'm happy to take the calls. Luckily, other than folks who are currently paying off sidewalks, no one will need to worry about waiving the fee this year since we're not charging it.
So Corey, before you sit down, and I'm gonna go piggyback on top of Councilor Allen, when we put this information out, please be as thorough and as clear as possible, because I don't want any misconceptions when it comes to sidewalk. And I don't want folks to believe just because this is happening, that they're gonna get a sidewalk within the next 1, 2, or maybe even 3 years. So let's just put the full facts on the table.
Agreed, yeah, and I would be happy to, once we have that drafted up, to share it with the council to make sure that it addresses the questions and concerns that you are all receiving. Thank you.
Okay. Items 24 and 25 relate to street lighting. Any questions on those items? Okay, items 26 and 27 relate to, 26 is a bond ordinance relating to sweeping. Budget Director Rudd, are you still here? So the question on this relates to, given that sweeping is a separate charge on the tax bill, how does this relate to bonding for it?
So there've been times when sweeping bonds for equipment, so we issue bonds and we pay back the debt, so some of the fee gets paid, goes toward debt payments. Then there've been times where we've purchased equipment essentially with cash from, and Brad, you could fight, you can interrupt if I say anything wrong, but where we pay cash. So the last few years we have paid basically cash for the equipment, and there's a formula for the fee. So the fee, basically in order to keep, the fee was low last year because they didn't purchase any equipment. So if we paid cash, the fee next year would spike because of the formula. So we basically said we'll use debt this year. It'll help keep the linear charge more stable so it doesn't go up and down all the time. That was the basic decision.
So in a sense, are we subsidizing the purchase equipment? Because it should be separate, should be paid for entirely through that fee, right? And shouldn't go from our general obligation.
I think the fee still pays for the equipment, and it would pay for that interest and the.
Will future fees pay for the payment of the debt?
Yeah.
Councilors Brad O'Connor, Commissioner of Finance. The bond will be issued to the fund. So all of the bond payments will come out of the fund. This is essentially a way to smooth out the cost of that equipment so we don't have the spikes and valleys each year.
Any other questions on these items? Thank you. Item 28 is to purchase vehicles. Any questions on that? Item 29 is to purchase equipment for the sign shop in DPW. Any questions on those? Okay. The remaining items all are waiver of competitive bids. I'll run through them really quickly, and then if anyone has any questions on any of them, we address those. So 30 is disposal services for sweep waste materials. 31 is hydraulic repair service and parts for various trucks. 32 is traffic signal fiber optics repair services. 33 is pay station parts. 30.
Stop. Hold on. Let's go back to 33. Because that's where I was getting at last week. So we're still doing business with Republic. Last week it was IPS and Civic Smart and Parkion. And that's what the question I asked last week was, 10 years ago, it was Parkion and Republic. And it was all proprietary. And now we're moving out, and then we have Civic Smart. So is Parkion and Republic still going to be in play, or is Republic out? Because it wasn't added in last week.
I can say that this is to make repairs on existing, so there still could be some out there that we haven't replaced yet. So I can probably get more information on that, but to my knowledge, we still have all four of those types out there. So when we have to make replacements or repairs, until we completely pull it out and upgrade it, we still need to do business with them.
And I'll talk to you offline, because
Okay.
Parkion and Republic were the same people, from my knowledge, 10 years ago. And then we came back with IPS and Civic Smart and Parkion, and remember last week when I was trying to remember who the other person was? That was Republic. And now Republic is back on the agenda. So I just want to know, are they still in play, or?
I believe they are, but like you said, we can follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other ones that you had questions on for that?
Why don't we just have you stay up in case the other ones come? So 34 is for towing service, 35 is for repair service and parts for hydraulic cylinders, 36, Monroe Tractor repair service and parts, 37 is for asphalt plant equipment, and 38 is for repair service and parts for relining of brake shoes for heavy vehicles. So any questions on any of those waivers? Okay, thank you, Madam President. Those are my items.
Counselor Hogan.
Thank you, President Hudson. I have items 39 through 45, 39, 42, 43, 44, and 45 have all been discussed in committee. We have the Parks Commissioner here. I thought I saw her here. Oh, there you are, Parks Commissioner. Why don't you run through these? I'm going to 40 and 41 I'll speak to separately.
Good afternoon, Julie LaFave, Commissioner of Parks and Recreation. Item number 39 is to enter into an agreement with Cornell Cooperative Extension for $5,000. They run programming, ag-based programming, urban farming type programming at our community centers at multiple locations. Okay, and I'll skip for item number 42 is to appropriate funds, ARPA funds for $55,000 for Meacham Park. If you have specific questions, Owen Kearney, I think, is here. Yes. And item number 43, ARPA funds in the amount of $175,000 to replace the ornamental fence around Passes Arboretum Park.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
You're very welcome. Item number 44, in the amount of $800,000 ARPA funds to repair and restore the pool and repair the water feature alongside the pool as well. Item number 45 is to appropriate funds from our capital funds, $160,000. This is our annual tree planting.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you.
Hold on, just real quick, what's the water feature?
There's the fenced-in pool adjacent to the playground. There's actually a mister, and it needs to be repaired. Thank you.
In items 40 and 41, I think the deputy mayor's here. We had a committee meeting, Parks and Recreation Committee meeting on this yesterday, and these are for funding for a multitude of programs for our city's youth. And if there are any questions on these two items? Hearing none. I
have a comment. And I want to make a comment on this because I know that this has been on the agenda since last week and it's come into question. And my thing is this, right now we have a city full of kids that we're talking about what do we do, how do we help these kids. So this program for me on number 40, I think this is huge. When you're talking about 1,000 young people in the city of Syracuse that will be going to their jobs in the summer, they'll receive stipends, they'll learn how to financially take care of their money. For me, I just think it's a win-win because that helps, it gives us a way to help some of these young people throughout this community to thrive and to learn how to grow to be responsible adults.
Thank you, President.
I have a brief question. Deputy Mayor Owens, was there any consideration made, or can there be any consideration made for some of these older teens that may have children of their own, so maybe they have childcare to attend these programs?
The individuals in the programs have relationships with those programs. You bring up a great point, Councilor White, and I'll go back to the partners to really figure out how we can make sure that those needs are met for these individuals.
Yeah, I would just think that,
Yep.
we make this program as expansive as possible.
Yep.
Right? And, that could be certainly a barrier
Yep.
to that some people.
And both Meg O'Connor and myself are part of the Child Care Consortium, so we can absolutely make any connections need to be made to make that possible.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, I do appreciate your efforts in this, and Meg, yesterday it was a great meeting. She did send us a report on the Gonzalez Summer Fellows Program from last year that this is sort of based on. It was a great report. We saw some YouTube videos, but it wasn't exactly as extensive as I would like to see of a report that would be generated from this program. Because as you mentioned yesterday, and President Hudson just alluded to, is that this could be a template that we could work off for the future.
Absolutely.
And I think, especially with federal money involved, I think if we had a uniform, verifiable metrics on all this stuff, and if we could maybe, I know, we'll have 2 more people
With
who will be
Janet.
part of the grants. If they could, and maybe the API people could put together a concise report that we could use this for this future.
So are you looking for a mechanism that we identify how we're going to measure what we're doing going forward, not
Right.
necessarily what happened going back?
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
Can I just jump in again?
Okay.
I just gonna smile through this one, right? No, not just because I'm the president, but I know that we look for metrics. I know we look for the best models. Out here in these streets, some things can't be measured. Some things you just have to say, we have to try this to see if we can get measurables on them. Some things aren't measurable, Counselor.
President, I wasn't doing this to contest the need of the program.
Understood.
I was doing this looking for the future and how we get funding for future programs. There's no doubt in my mind, especially my second council district, that a program like this is needed to alleviate some of the problems we have in the streets. I'm very aware of that. But I think that this is important. If we have measurable metrics, that we probably will be able to get funding for this program to go in the future.
Yeah, I'll get with our partners to identify some items that can be clearly measured equally across the board. But to the point we made the other day, there are nuances for each partner because they provide specialities. Hassan was given as an example. His is entrepreneurship. Another entity may be sports. So we'll get our heads together to think about how that can be pulled together.
Yeah, once
But
again-
baseline information, of course.
Yes.
I think it's fair, though, especially when with ARPA money, there's a certain amount of wiggle room where, there may not be a requirement for, a lot of detailed metrics, right? But there's no way you can justify asking for money in the future without a performance.
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to figure out how to get baseline information that we can use across the board with the flexibility that some programs would need because of the specialty they have.
Yeah, and I just want to draw a parallel. We've had past discussions on this council before this administration about nonprofits with CDBG who couldn't provide us performance metrics.
Absolutely.
And were ultimately penalized as a result. So I just in terms of, if you're talking about a program going forward, ARPA money won't be available then.
Right.
So that means we'll be asking somebody else for the money.
And need
which
the
means we'll
background
have to show them
information to do
something.
that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep. If you can't measure it, it didn't happen necessarily.
That's exactly
to someone who wasn't in the room.
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm going to call all those items ready. Thank you very much, President.
Councilor Junk.
Thank you, Madam President. I have item 6 to 68. The first item, 6 to 58, are police. Chief?
Hello, Joe Cecil, First Deputy Chief with Syracuse Police Department. I apologize in advance. I have a bunch of items in front of you. You're gonna be seeing a lot of me. If you need to take a break, let me know. Did you want me to start with 46 then, the local law?
Yes, let's start with that.
Oh, by the way, when I worked at City Hall Commons, I researched it. It was originally built in 1842. It burned down twice, which wouldn't have happened under Chief Mons. And then the site you see now is 1894, I think. So it's
I
old.
had 1891.
Well, you would know better than me. Thanks. So 46 is a change to the local law for the prohibition of what's called off-road vehicles, more commonly known as ATVs and dirt bikes. The highlights of this ordinance, and I want to thank the councilors for working with the police department, the law, and the city to come up with an ordinance that I think will work for you, for us, and most importantly for the citizens, for us to address these ATVs and dirt bikes. The highlights are that there'll be 3 type of levels. The first time you get caught with one of these on the street, it'll be $500 fine. The second time, $750. Those 2 will be violations. The third time, it will be a misdemeanor and a $1,000 fine. Along with each one of those, though, it will cost you $2,000 to get that ATV or dirt bike back, and you'll also have to show proof that you actually own the vehicle. So I think it will go a long way into addressing these. Once we get them, I don't think if they are illegal, that the folks will be getting them back to do this second or third time around.
I have just a statement and a question.
Yes. Okay.
First, just credit to Councilor Allen and President Hudson for their contribution. I know it helped, certainly from the concerns that I've heard they've expressed, fine-tune the legislation. Just a question about the recent accident over on Rich and Onondaga. What kind of motor vehicle, if you will, was that person who unfortunately passed driving when that accident happened? Was it a motorcycle or was it an ATV off-road?
I'm sorry, I missed the location.
The recent incident where the gentleman passed away, he was pinned under a car on Onondaga and Rich Street.
Oh, correct, yes, that was a motorcycle. That was a legal motorcycle.
As this is going to be new to the general public, and most of them that are probably riding the bikes are younger children, they're probably not going to watch this, and they probably don't watch the news either. So how are we going to communicate to them that these are now the new standards and these are going to be the new consequences? Like, what's our effort going to be for the community outreach?
That's a great question, Counselor. What we probably will do is have our PIO go on all the news channels, because you're right, not everyone's going to watch this, and they do need to know that this is new, and what the fees are and what the violations are. So that would be the start, and if you have any other suggestions, we'll be happy to do it. People should know that because it's going to be brand new. Yep.
Out of the corner stores, start putting up the information and letting them know when they're walking in and out those corner stores about them bikes.
I thought I saw Jimmy Oliver here. I don't know if he left or not, but maybe, yeah, because maybe this would be like good for him with his new position too, to kind of, figure out, not trying to give you more work, but you know what I mean.
You got a lot of suggestions for you.
And we have TNTs as well, channel that through them and
Absolutely.
make sure.
Good point. Yep, we can do it through TNT, Sun, and Neighborhood Watch as well. Yep.
Any other questions, councilors?
Just brief comment. Chief, I just want to thank you for working with us. I think that we backed off the rush to criminality was a great thing, and I think we came up with a great piece of legislation that's really going to protect our streets, but also keep our youth from being over-criminalized, and that's very important.
I agree. Thank you.
And I think it's important we realize and are cognizant of the fact that the lives that are most in danger are the kids who are riding these bikes. As Chief Trudell said, that there were 3 fatalities directly attributed to these issues.
Yes.
So I want to congratulate Council on the
I think the councilors and the police and everybody came together because I think we understood the intention and that, either way, this is the problem. How we get it addressed, I think everybody understood it. And we came to this point and very happy with it.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. Number 47 is a waiver of the RFP for $15,000 for the Camillus Animal Hospital. This is the animal hospital we've used for, as far as I can remember, 25 years. They are experts in the care and treatment of our canine partners. They have been proven over the years to actually extend the working life of these canine partners of ours. So we continually go back to them with this waiver so that they can treat and care the current canines that we have on our job.
Any question?
Oh, okay. 48 is with the Mohawk Valley Information Technologies. We do this every year. They maintain our website. This is for $2,500. It's per diem, so we may not use this because we just got word from Ruthney just a few days ago that our website looks like it's very close to being implemented, our new website. So we may not even need to use this, but because we are so close, it would be helpful to have this in case we do need it. As it stands right now, Mohawk Valley is the only one that can do major changes to our website, so we need this $2,500 to pay them when they send us a bill, if we need them.
So Chief, you said you're getting close. So does that mean that someone from in our structure, Ruthney, would monitor the website from now on, not Mohawk Valley?
Brittany, Communications Director. What that means is a City of Syracuse employee would need to be authorized to manage content on that website, so we don't outsource it anymore.
Okay.
This is great news, by the way. Any questions about that, 48? 49 is a waiver for Well Now Urgent Care. This is a facility right in the city of Syracuse on Canal Street. We're going to be using them. It's for $10,000. We use them for hepatitis B vaccinations, drug testing and screening, and also for physical examinations and evaluations of our new hires, including the new recruits that came into the academy, and anytime we have a lateral transfer over to our department.
I'm just going to repeat my comment that I'd love to see some stairway testing as a part of the police department's regular testing policy.
Okay. Number 50 is an American Rescue Plan Act in the amount of $300,000. Oh, and this one, Jimmy Oliver, I think, is going to come up and speak to it, because I don't have too much info, but I know he does.
Good afternoon. Jimmy Oliver, Director of Community Engagement for the Police Department. Any questions?
So this is the money on all the leagues that are going on, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's one-time purchases to build infrastructure for the Community Engagement Department as well as the PAL program. It could be vehicles. We want to purchase vehicles so we can be able to transport kids from schools, or we have to pick them up. It could be creating a website to put our information and documents of what we're doing. It could be paying for our Youth Advisory Council, which I think will be very important for kids 10 to 19 to be able to come up with ideas and solutions to bring to the city. It could be field trips. It could be a variety of different things. Our STEM program that we want to create. It could be our financial literacy program, our generational wealth program that we want to create as well.
You know, on your application to apply for summer activities, I saw that in the application that the income was asked on those applications. Now, you know, as a soccer player, you know, there's a lot of things that goes into playing soccer: shin guard, shoes, all of those equipment. Now, is this money strictly capital for vehicle and other stuff, and doesn't go down to maybe helping kids that are struggling to get those equipment?
Well, right now, currently, our programs are free. All of our camps are free for kids 6 to 18, and then we plan to target 20 to 25 in the future. The ARPA money, again, has to be for one-time purchases, so that's not for daily operations. There is a budget of $160,000 that we have that's been invested by the Syracuse Police Department for PAL that would pay for some of these items that you mentioned.
Okay, that's great. That's really great.
Councilman
Any other questions? Yeah.
Not a question, just a comment. This is just for future reference. It has nothing to do with the ARPA money. I remember I talked with the deputy, I think about this a while ago. I've been talking about it for a while. It'll be awesome if the city of Syracuse takes over youth football in the city, and all 4 parks, and ultimately make it very, very cheap for kids to participate. Right now, the parks are not filled with kids because they're charging them $250, $300 for a family, for a kid to participate. Charging $10 for them to participate. You'll have every kid in the city in the park. And it's only $40,000 to fund all 4 programs. I'm just want to throw that out there.
That's a good point. I know when I was in Richmond, Virginia, the City Parks and Rec Department ran city football, and it was affordable for the kids. I think it was somewhere around $25 a year to participate, and they had equipment. To your point again, as I'm walking and traveling throughout the city, people are talking about Pop Warner football. what is the alternative. They want quality over quantity. So definitely it'd be something that PAL in the future can look towards doing. And that's why we're starting our camps that will start this weekend, our football camp, which we hosted at Nottingham High School, where we can start developing young people from ages 6 to 12, and then we're going to work our way up.
Top, because there are always resources. I'm working with John Cometti and he's working with the NFL, one of the foundations, and they're trying to figure out a way. Maybe we can talk offline, because I think that they're going to step in and they're going to start working with our kids in the parks with the football.
I think just one last thing, if I could add. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of officers who love football. And obviously, best case scenario, I'm not trying to give them more volunteer work, is if every team had at least one officer as a coach. You're talking about building community police relations. It won't happen better with kids and their parents at a football game. So just something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what PAL is about, building relationships between law enforcement and our community, particularly with our youth. We have quite a few SPD officers who have volunteered to participate in all of our camps that we will host this summer, as well as the district attorney's office, as well as the sheriff's department, as well as the state troopers who will be involved as well.
That's cool.
As well as counselors.
Yeah, you play soccer.
I'll be at Nottingham, in fact.
Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Wording is so very important, right?
Yes.
So we're going to go back through item 50. You said it may be used for passenger van. No, it says it will be used for passenger vans.
Yes.
So wording is very important, okay?
Okay.
It's not going to maybe, it's going to be used.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Jimmy, it says that for marketing and advertising, it also mentions community events. Does that mean that this money will support some of these generated events in the community?
Yeah, because, you know, marketing, you got to get it out to where people who need it the most is at. Everyone's not on the internet, so that comes with flyer. Go ahead.
Is there an application process, or is there an application process
for
the people in the community to look for that support?
To register or for marketing?
For marketing.
Not right now. We only been in existence for about 6 weeks. And that, again, to be able to build capacity, a lot of programs, PAL programs, are 50 to 100 years ahead of us. And so there's a plan, a phase to implement that. And that's something that we plan to do in 2022. Build a website, put that information out, get it to companies and organizations that are doing that work, and try to give them a seat at the table who are normally not there. So we're going to be looking for different folks to do that and try to figure out who those individuals are. So there's a lot of organizations that I've talked to since my 6 months on the job who are doing some different things in the community, but I know that there's a process that you have to go through and trying to have those conversations with the right people to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's to make sure that this program is sustainable and that it turns into an organization from a program. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Real quick, Jimmy, looks like just quick math, like there might be like a $80,000 budget deficit between the money from the police department and what you're asking from us. Do you have any plan on how you're going to make that up, or do you need more support from us?
We're always looking for support. We're always looking for folks to come and invest in this program. I know something that was mentioned earlier is measuring whether your program is impactful and intentional, and that's something that we plan to put forth a quality tool that will have individuals who do not have any ties to PAL, and we will give them a document and have them come and evaluate our program from clean, safe, fun, engagement, a variety of different tools, and measure us from 1 to 5, 1 being terrible, 5 being the best. And then we will take that information and present it to our board of directors, and then we will come up with a plan how to strategically put those things in place.
Also, I just wanted to add that you just mentioned the board of directors. As in any board, fundraising, Jimmy is getting so much interaction with individuals who, I didn't know, because PAL was not here, how many people experience PAL in their life. So it's very sentimental to them. They want to give back. So we're setting up the mechanisms now because by which we can begin to take donations to support the program.
Can I?
I'm sorry, President Hudson. I would just say, to the extent that you do need any support from the council, please come back.
Thank you.
So can I just ask this one question, then I'm gonna keep moving with the agenda. I'm looking here at the money that we're putting in, ARPA money, okay? I heard what you said, Jimmy. I heard you talk about the DA and the sheriffs and all these folks. Don't all these people have seizure money? Don't all these people have somebody?
Yes,
I'm not trying to put nobody on the spot, but.
Yes, ma'am, they do.
Okay, so.
Yes.
I mean, if he $80,000 short, just hit them all up for 20 and call it a day.
Let's go.
Right?
Right.
Okay, just one. All right, just my little contribution to this.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jimmy. I think that's it, right, councilors? Yeah,
Thanks a
thank
lot.
you.
Yes.
Keep.
I have no questions.
Go ahead.
I have no questions.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other one? No? All right. 51? No. No.
Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day.
Smart investment.
Thank you.
So 52 is a waiver of the RFP for $230,000 for ShotSpotter. This would be for year 21 through 22, and for our current coverage of 3.5 miles, which, as all of you know, is all on the south and west side of the city. That would cover the full fiscal year for that current footprint.
Chief.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question on that then. So we don't have spot shotter anywhere outside of the south and the southwest side of the city?
Correct. We do not. Yeah, our original plan was based on gun violence in a specific area, as will our expansion, if we do an expansion. So we picked areas that were obviously having the gun violence, and they clearly were south and west. So that's where we put it. And it's roughly 3.5 miles, square miles.
Curious, because I know up there on that hill, they'd be popping off.
Yeah, well, we are looking for an expansion, just so you know. We're in the works already. We had our gun violence analysts do a workup already. Our crime analysts do a workup already, and I'll tell you, there was several other hotspots now. One of them is the Butternut Street area. The other one is Rolling Greens on the east side, and then a further expansion to the south in your district, Counselor. So there's 3 other areas that we are looking to expand in, and we've already drawn up the maps. We're just now looking to secure the funding and seeing if we're going to go that direction.
So the pace of it would be dictated by the funding? How quickly it will move?
Somewhat it would be, yes, it would be. Currently, the cost out was $280,000 for 1 year. Because this expansion would be more than 3.5, it would be more than what we currently have. So it would be an additional $280,000 for the expansion.
Where are you looking for funds? Is it just grants?
Well, grants would be great. I don't know if federal stimulus is kind of in the play right now for it as well.
Would I guess, Janet, would ARPA money qualify for this, or is it, or?
Yeah, it would.
Would?
So I'm meeting with both chiefs tomorrow to talk about public safety and the ARPA plan. Part of the discussion tomorrow will be looking at ShotSpotter expansion as another option.
Okay.
Cameras?
Cameras too, yep. Yeah.
I was going to ask that, Chief, you know, and this may be for, I don't know if it's already happening or if it's more for a more in-depth discussion, but are we looking into coordinating the placement of ShotSpotter with cameras? I know obviously ShotSpotter tell you where shots came from, but you know, and then you show up, you have shells, of course, but you have no people there.
Oh, correct. Yeah, Counselor, it's a great question. It's almost happening automatically, because where we have the gun violence is where we've placed the cameras. So for instance, if the expansion occurs on Butternut Street, as you know, we're cambered up over there. Same with the east side. So it's kind of happening in a natural way anyways. But if it doesn't, certainly we would look to do that. It makes perfect sense. Keep in mind, we do have those off-duty, well, not off-duty, we have retired officers that are coming in to monitor these cameras, and they do exactly that. Once they hear ShotSpotter go off, get the notification. If the cameras aren't pointed in that direction, they're zeroing in on it to see if we can pick something up on the camera. Is that? Okay, so number 53 looks like a duplicate, but it's not. It's for ShotSpotter again, but it's to pay for the money from when we reactivated it in April of this year until June 30th of this year. So basically, what we used it for in the last fiscal year, which is $43,000.
Is this a fee?
It is
a fee to turn it on, back on?
Oh, it's not just to turn it, it was the fee for using it. From the minute we turned it on in April until June 30th, starting the new fiscal year, we had it activated, so it's for the service, not just to turn it on.
Any questions? Yeah, keep going, Chief.
Okay, sure. 54 is a request to enter into a Department of Justice Community Policing Service grant for a crisis intervention teams program. This is going to be used for training, recertification, possibly for a diversionary program. We're working on that as well, where we would have a mobile crisis unit that would actually work on a shift, most likely the 3 to 11 shift, and take calls that don't need a police officer. So it would be training, recertification, and possibly that as well. Keep in mind, we are moving in on our target of 20% of the department being crisis intervention trained. We did recently acquire the ability to train entire groups on our own and not have to rely on the county or their folks. We have 2 trained individuals now that can teach this class. And in addition to that, we also got approval to actually train the academy. 39 officers that we have in the academy. We kind of have, it was kind of foolish not to be able to train them, but the rule was at the time, they wanted officers that had 4 to 5 years on, so they had some maturity. Well, we didn't really necessarily agree with that. We thought if you have a captive audience of 35, 40, currently 39 officers in the academy, captive audience that you can train in that 40-hour-a-week crisis intervention team training, why not do it right then? So we are going to be doing that as well. So we will come very close to hitting that 20% of training, 20% of the department trained on crisis intervention with those 2 things going at the same time.
Does this work in conjunction with the cultural competency training? Cultural competency?
Yes, that's separate. That's a separate thing that's going on in our in-service training and in the academy. It's a little separate, though, than that.
Chief, you said, oh, yes, briefly, you said you may be instituting a non-police response model, but I also thought that it might have been a little bit further along. Is that the plan to develop it? It's just not developed yet, or where are you guys going with that?
Sure, no, it's one of the mayor's executive orders, I believe, number 15, so we are definitely doing that. We've had 4 or 5 meetings, Counselor, where we brought all those agencies in, and we're developing that team. I just meant May as in, I was told by Janet before I came in front, because I know when you were at the Public Safety Committee meeting, we mentioned the diversionary program. Janet mentioned that this grant may not fit that, so I don't know if Janet wants to elucidate that, but that's why I said May for that. Gotcha. We are clearly moving toward a diversionary program, no doubt.
Thank you.
So,
just for 1 year, I'm sorry, man.
So Chief, let me ask you a question. You said you assembled the team. How many people, how many agencies came to the table for that meeting?
Well, there were about 30 people on there. So you had the county, you had Liberty Resources, you had folks from St. Joe's, there were crisis intervention, well, crisis mobile people as well. A lot of agencies. The deputy mayor can probably name them all. I attended, but I don't know how to name them all in front of you right now.
But it was most of our agencies within our in our area, correct?
Yeah, and most importantly, law enforcement, 911 is in there. 911 has provided us with some amazing data to give us an idea of just the gravity of what we're looking to approach. That is directing us in how we approach it in a more effective scale so that we can make sure we get it right. It always will have to adjust. So, and then we just recently added the National Action Network that has been doing some work, as well as Southwest Community Center, who's doing some mental health work as well in the community. We're meeting again tomorrow morning.
Okay, and if you can, I mean, not trying to be a pain, but could you send me a list? I don't know if any of the other counselors want it, but could you
Sure.
send me a list of the agencies involved?
Yep, and I will say, Council President, from the time I started the group meeting, I think in April we started meeting, that group has not waned. It has been, they are all committed to making this happen for our community. We are concentrating, of course, in the city. Liberty Resources and Contact serve the entire county, so we're looking at a model that can be replicated in other communities as well.
Could you make sure you send that to all the councilors?
Absolutely. I'll send a list of them.
This
I
is
will
just for
say-
1 year, right, Chief? This is just for 1 year, or is this?
Yes, well, the grant would, yes, it would be a 1 year, well, it's a grant, so I don't know if we have to necessarily spend it within 1 year or not.
2 years?
Okay, so now y'all gonna make me come back to another question, because the governor announced yesterday that gun violence is an epidemic or health crisis. So how is that gonna fit into any of this money, if it fits in at all? Because it should be some way we can.
Well, Council, you can bet that we have to see what the governor's gonna do first. The group that he's gonna pull together, he's committed resources, and we're gonna be at the table just like any other community. When he did his announcement, was talking about Rochester primarily, but Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, we're all dealing with the same thing. So we definitely will, we have the relationships and the connections where we're going to absolutely be looking at what's going to be available and how we can get access to
I
it.
was curious, because we're working with ARPA money now, and everything we're saying is ARPA, and even when we talk about some of these programs that Jimmy Oliver talked about. So what is the governor sending down? How, maybe, we don't know. I
We don't know
we
yet. Yeah.
But at some point, maybe those dollars will be able to fold into a lot of this programming we're talking about.
Everything that we pull together, as mentioned before, ARPA is going to be a one-time. We have to continue to look at reoccurring sources for the PAL program. It is critical that we collectively invest into PAL, not just government, but business and
I got
everyone else that
$5.
benefits.
I got $5.
Thank you, I'll take it.
And Councilor President, I just want to mention too, because I mentioned to the committee, the Public Safety Committee, this is a critically important, this diversionary program thing, and just as an example, because we're the only game in town all the time. So we had this female on the north side, or on the east side, who I happen to know from 20 years ago. She called the police department 52 times in 6 hours because she was off her medicine. We're mandated to go. We went every single time. You know, that's a lot of resources. We eventually got a hold of Liberty Resources. Liberty Resources and I went there together, spent about an hour with her, got her hooked up with her caseworker, got her back on her meds, and she hasn't called one time since then. So it's critically important, not only for the police department, resource-wise, but for the community, because they will get better services. An officer going there 52 times, and many times it was a different officer every time. He or she doesn't know what, they're not helping. They're doing what they can, but they're not helping.
And that's going to the home though, so I'm hoping that this is gonna translate to the streets as well. So
Yes.
that when we come up against, because you know better than I do, that a lot of the arrests and a lot of the incidents that you make contact with, there's no criminality. It's just mental health and drug addiction.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this will translate that way as well.
I agree. I think I'm on, are you all set with 54?
55.
55 is our contract with our police pastors, with Reverend Darren Jaime and Pastor Lateef Johnson Kinsey, for $17,500. They do an array of things for us, as all of you know. And then again, this is just our contract, our yearly contract with them.
Questions?
56 is for a contract with pretty much every gun range in central New York, Bridgeport, Elbridge, Pathfinder, Camillus, for our annual training, recertification, and also this money will be used to put the academy through later this year.
Any questions? Keep going, Chief.
57 is for Lewis Uniform and United Uniform, both companies in the city of Syracuse. It's for $10,000. This is for uniforms that are destroyed or ruined during operation when the officer's on duty. If he or she tears a uniform or damages uniform, they can be replaced with this money here. So, 58 is, again, with Lewis Uniform, United Uniform, and also Charney's. This is for $205,500. This is a contractual thing with the department, that $500 card that every officer gets to purchase uniforms, or if they are in a non-uniform capacity, to purchase non-uniform clothing at these three places. I think I'm done.
Without other question, I think that's it for the police.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Item 59, Chief Mann.
Good afternoon, members of the council. Good afternoon, Madam President. Number 59 is a request to accept money from the New York State Department of Health. Our department earns money when our firefighters get trained in emergency medical educational courses, and we are looking at getting reimbursed up to $70,000. So that's that item number. Does anybody have any questions on that?
We always accept money.
That's my goal all the time. Thanks. Item number 60 is to go into an agreement for the services of Jordan Holliday, who is a medical services director, and basically he would provide medical direction and consultation to the fire chief, and he's an active participant in our quality improvement program, and he represents our medical interests with all the different services we do in the streets. So that's for a 1-year contract with him for $12,000. Does anybody have any questions on that item? Number 61 is to reach an agreement with Timothy Downs. It's mandatory for our department to participate in an ongoing interactive continuous medical educational program. Timothy Downs oversees this program. We have a department-wide cable network that we use to give training to on-duty members, so they all can receive training on duty so they can respond to alarms at the same time. Does anybody have any questions on that item? Okay. Number 62 is to reach an agreement with our fire chaplain. This will be for $6,000. Does anybody have any questions regarding this item? All right, 63 and 64 is in regards to our fiscal year 21-22 capital improvement plan. It's for $575,000. This will cover 3 different categories. One is environmental impact and motor systems. The next one will be external facilities, to upgrade all of our external facilities. And the other one would be to upgrade our internal facilities. Does anybody have any questions with those items?
Keep going.
Okay. The next item I have was a waiver to reach an agreement with, or to be able to utilize Churchville fire equipment. And basically what they do, we have our personal protective gear that every firefighter is issued. When that gear gets ripped, torn, burned at a fire, the gear usually lasts up to 10 years. So before 10 years happens, if the gear gets in a situation where it needs to be repaired, we utilize this company. And they're authorized to meet all the national standards for PPE repairs. Does anybody have any questions on that? The next item, 66 and 67, are waivers to obtain replacement parts and to utilize services for preventive maintenance for our specialty tools, otherwise known as the Jaws of Life. Does anybody have any questions on those items? And the last item is for the Value Tech card. This is the card that we use at Lewis Uniform and United Uniform. It's basically a debit card the firefighters get, and it tracks all the purchases so we can have accountability of all the items that the firefighters are purchasing. So those are all my items.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
That's it for me, Matt.
Thank you. Counselor Allen.
thank you. Item 69 through 82. Item 69 is to amend the general ordinance for the purpose of this amendment is to exempt residential properties from the need to pay a license fee when hiring someone to play music for entertainment at their own house. So we're going to keep item 69 on the agenda. I know we had discussion in the committee meeting about item 69 and 70. Item 70, we're going to hold for additional discussion on the amendment, which we'll do next week at the item 71. Land bank, I do see Caitlin here. You kind of described it last week at the committee meeting, but for those that weren't here, do you want to just come up and give a brief description? And I believe you had 71 and 72, right? Okay.
Yes. 71 is a funding contract for this current fiscal year that just started. It's very similar to last year's funding contract, but we have removed the portion about funds that are restricted to demolitions. So last year, our contract provided some funding for property maintenance and some for demolitions. It's my understanding that the administration is going to be presenting you at your next meeting, I think, with a contract with using ARPA funds to fund demolitions. So this money from the city's general fund would just be for property maintenance.
Any questions on that? Okay. And item 70.
This is to enable the land bank to apply for a state environmental protection fund grant for the Gustav Stickley House. We're currently holding title to that property to help facilitate the interior restoration so that we can ultimately turn it over to OHA for them to operate it as a house museum. We plan on applying later this month for the state EPF grant, and in order to submit an application, we have to have a municipal resolution of support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin.
All right. And item 73.
Good afternoon, Council. Jake Dishaw, Director of Code Enforcement. Item number 73 is to seek permission for an encroachment to construct a 15-foot concrete patio out into the city right-of-way on the Avery Ave side of the restaurant located there. Yeah, Blarney Stone. This would, if you're familiar with the front on Avery, there's an existing patio on the left side of the front door, and this would basically match that on the right side and just provide more seating. It'd be in front of where the existing wheelchair ramp is.
Well, at some points I couldn't draw the diagram, but probably now I could.
All right. So I don't think we have any questions, just comments from Councilor Hogan on this one. Thank you. And item 74 through 82, Michelle, please. The only one that we had questions about at the committee meeting was item 79, the Hudson Street, but we did receive a call from Caitlin saying that it was actually vacant and the water was shut off. Most of them are vacant land, but you can just run down the list really quick.
Sure. So item number, I'm gonna go in opposite order if that's okay, because I have them on a weird list here. Item 81, 124 Peter Street, District 1, owes approximately $91,000. Item number 79, 139 Hudson Street, District 4, owes approximately $9,000. Item number 80, 286 Norwood Ave, District 5, owes approximately $25,000. Item number 77, 306 Elliott Street, District 2, owes approximately $10,000. Item number 78, 1951 Fayette Street, East and Ives Street, District 5, owes approximately $6,000. Item 74, 75, and 76, 2956 Genesee Street East, 2960 Genesee Street East, and 2964 Genesee Street East, all owe between $150,000 and $160,000 each respectively.
Same person on those?
Yep. Item number 82, 510-12 Rich Street, District 4, owes approximately $5,000.
You mentioned 79-139 Hudson Street. Is that in the fourth? It's listed as fifth, but you said it was fourth.
79 and 82 are, should say fourth district.
Should be fourth, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Counselor Hogan?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.